Hi there, it's Vanessa from Cove, and you're listening to the 90th edition of The Networker, 90 editions. That number snuck up on me a little, and I wanted to pause on it for a second before we get into things. Every edition of this newsletter has been built on the same premise that relationships are not a soft add onto business or to life, they're the actual mechanism. This week's content makes that case from more directions than usual. So let's dive in. We open with a piece from entrepreneur on Jason Butcher, founder of Orbit Capital, who treats every investment as the beginning of a relationship rather than the end of a transaction. As AI makes information easier to access, Butcher's argument is that knowledge itself becomes less valuable while judgment, trust, and reputation become scarce. Some of his most significant opportunities never started in a boardroom. They started with a conversation over coffee. Inc. covers Glassdoor's 2026 ranking of the best CEOs, and the data underneath it is worth sitting with. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang topped the list with a 99% approval rating, while average senior leadership ratings across the business world fell to their lowest point since 2017. The three-step framework behind the highest-rated leaders has nothing to do with better software. Trade corporate mandates for open curiosity. Over-communicate the mission, anchor culture and psychological safety. None of it is complicated. All of it requires actually doing it. Next, Forbes brings a piece on workplace conflict that reframes something a lot of teams get wrong. Conflict itself costs businesses an estimated $2 billion a day in lost productivity. But the real damage comes from both extremes. Teams that explode into hostility and teams that avoid friction so completely that deadlines quietly collapse. The middle ground, what the piece calls generative conflict, runs on curiosity and shared purpose rather than avoidance or attack. The 3D framework, define, discuss, decide, gives leaders an actual structure to use disagreement well instead of dreading it. Moving on, Fast Company covers something I found genuinely useful for how I think about the first meetings. The way we introduce people, leading with title, company, and school, invites comparison before two people even get a chance to see each other as human. Connect Effect has run more than 70 activations testing status-free introductions instead, asking what's been on someone's mind rather than what they do. In one activation, 97% of participants said the experience made it easier to meet new people. The introduction itself, it turns out, might be one of the most overlooked pieces of community infrastructure we have. Back to Forbes also covering 4 lessons from Answers Now, a company delivering autism therapy through a workforce that's becoming increasingly AI native. Despite the technology, the CEO argues the entire model depends on deeply personal relationships between clinicians and families. The lessons weren't about better tools. They were about using AI to remove friction rather than relationships, protecting staff who were already stretched too thin, and treating community investment with the same seriousness as any technology rollout. Next, we get a piece from the conversation prompted, of all things, by a new BBC sitcom about a care robot. It raises a genuinely serious question underneath the comedy. Could a robot companion meaningfully reduce loneliness in older adults? Researchers are clear that loneliness isn't simply the absence of company. It's the feeling that your relationships are insufficient. The most promising use of the technology may not be replacing human connection at all, but nudging someone to pick up the phone and call a friend they've been meaning to reach. Stanford Graduate School of Business shares a conversation with Professor Brian Lowery that I keep coming back to. His argument is that identity isn't something people hold privately. It's built through interaction, which means a leader's mood, tone, and presence directly shape how employees see themselves and behave at work. Research shows that the closer an employee's perception of a leader matches how that leader sees themselves, the safer and more effective the whole team becomes. It's a genuinely useful reframe for anyone managing people. We close the articles with a piece from the Cove blog on something that sounds mundane but really isn't. Bad CRM data is rarely an admin problem. It usually starts at a booth when a name gets typed into a phone in a loud hall and the context evaporates before anyone writes it down. Gartner estimates poor data quality costs large organizations about $12.9 million a year, almost none of it from one dramatic failure. The fix isn't a better cleanup tool. It's getting the record right in the 10 seconds you actually have. Before we wrap up, let's turn to this week's recommendations. Our book of the week is Connected Leadership by Andy Lapata, whose HBR piece on networking up we actually featured a few editions back. His argument here is direct. Professional relationships sit at the heart of executive success, yet most leaders leave their networks to chance and sometimes actively discourage their own staff from building strong bonds. The book maps out how to build a network of people who are positioned to support you, genuinely want to support you, and understand exactly what kind of support you need. And our podcast of the week is The Tamsin Show, with an episode on making friends as an adult. Tamsin Fadal shares her own experience rebuilding a smaller, deeper circle of friendships after a major life transition, and offers 4 practical ways to recognize which friendships feed you and which ones drain you. She draws on the decades-long Harvard study of adult development, which links friendship directly to happiness, health, and longevity. It's a warm, honest episode and a good reminder that this newsletter's whole premise applies just as much outside of work as inside it. That's all for the 90th edition of The Networker. 90 editions in, the thread has never really changed. Trust outperforms technology. Conflict handled well builds a team that avoidance never could. An introduction that leads with humanity beats one that leads with a title. And the smallest moments. 10 seconds at a booth, one honest conversation, one call to an old friend, are usually the ones doing the most work. Thank you for reading this far with us. Until next time, stay connected, stay deliberate, and remember, your network isn't defined by how many people you reach. It's defined by how intentionally you build. And don't forget, the full edition of The Networker is waiting for you in your inbox. I'll see you next time.